The following program is a special presentation of the Big Ten Network, produced in association with the University of Wisconsin.
Okay, national champion athlete, national champion as a coach, a member of 3 Halls of Fame. Scratching your skull as to who it might be? We'll meet her next on Wisconsin Reflections. Women's athletics in the mid-1970s was a tough row to hoe for female athletes. Limited money and facilities made the commitment solely about love of the sport and not about fame and glory, but some found it nonetheless. Sue Ela was not simply a pioneer in her sportive crew, she was a champion, part of the Varsity 8 from UW-Madison to win the national championship in 1975, and coach of the 1986 championship team. She takes her place this weekend with Badger sports legends as a new inductee into the University of Wisconsin Athletic Hall of Fame. Sue Ela joins us today. Sue, welcome. And congratulations, first of all. It's richly deserved.
Thank you very much.
You know, this is probably pause for you to kind of look back and say what a long, strange trip it's been. But when you first came to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, women's sports didn't exist, correct?
That's right. I think there were some club sports that had started, but nothing really in the high school for me as I departed and started college. And so I really wasn't looking for that when I came to the UW. But when I came to the UW, I also happened to live right near the crew house. Mm-hmm. And I saw what rowing looked like from the top of the crew house and was hooked just like that.
But this sport of women's crew, which Wisconsin has a national, international reputation of excellence for, didn't start out with the athletic department saying, we have to put together a crew team for these young women. It started out with young women saying, we want a crew team. Can you talk about the political and social dynamics at work at that time in the early 70s? Because I think a lot of young women take all of these things for granted now. And it's near history, and yet it's shocking that so little existed for women at that time.
I think that's true. As I said, I really didn't have any expectations because there had been nothing there for me before. I met other young women in the dorms near where I lived who were sort of feeling the same way once they had seen this opportunity for the men. It was something that just tickled our interest, and we really wanted to give it a try.
Did you think it was a feminist act, or was this just more like, hey, I want to play sports too?
It was purely and simply, gosh, I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate to cross paths with some friends, Barbara Schaefer, who lived in my dormitory, Kathy Wutke, who I consider to be the founder of the women's rowing program, in the nearby dorms. And she actually put a sign up and drew in some of us who were interested and got us together in one room, and we talked about it. And that was the beginning in the spring of 1972.
What was it about the time that made that happen?
I think we were, you know, you go off to college and you're excited about all the opportunities and the doors that might open for you. And here, just outside our door, was this incredible sport. Yeah. Most of us had never heard of it, but Kathy Wutke's father had rowed, Barbara Schaefer's brother had rowed, so they sort of drew us all in.
But why you young women instead of the young women 5 or 10 years earlier? What was it about the time that that allowed you to say, hey, we want to do this?
That's a very good question. There were young women before that time who wanted to have those opportunities. In fact, I researched the 1933-34 teams that competed for one of the sororities. Mm-hmm. They had an oar that the winning team would put in their smoking room for the year, their smoking parlor.
Ah, well.
And it only lasted for 2 years, but I was able to track down a few of those women. And this was after the women's rowing program was a varsity sport. And some of their comments were, I remember one lady said, gosh, I would have given anything to be able to actually train in the sport of rowing. She was a Phi Ed major. Another's husband said that his wife loved rowing more than anything else in college, and it was only a 2-year opportunity for her. Another one said that they had raised money for the men's team to go to Poughkeepsie by creating and selling pins.
Right.
And so there was interest way before our time. I think that
But you guys did it.
I think there was just a growing need for women to have the opportunity to be in a competitive sport, to have those lifelong values and the tools that you learn and the skills in a sport.
What were the reactions from other women on campus and the male students on campus?
We, that's a big question. There was a lot of mixed reaction. There was a lot of tension around the boathouse. There were men who didn't want to see us in their boathouse.
Really?
And
well, I guess that's, yeah.
there were women on campus who I think felt that we were in the wrong place and it wasn't something a woman should be doing.
There was also a stigma about female athletes at the time.
That's true.
About their sexual preference, or however you want to say it, that if you competed in sports, you were less feminine or whatever. I mean, there were a lot of stigmas associated with it.
There have always been stigmas. There will always be stigmas, and I think that the bottom line is that sports for women has proven to be one of the greatest educators, as it is for men, and it's a very positive thing that we see now. Sports for girls.
Well, I have daughters.
From kindergarten on.
I have daughters who competed in high school in basketball and soccer and volleyball, and I coached their teams. And I always felt, I grew up as an athlete in high school, and I always felt that it was a club that women weren't privy to and then they got into it, and they knew all these codes that anyone who had been on a team learned in team sports. And how can it not be beneficial to everyone? And you see a lot of people who might have opposed it until their daughter became an athlete, and then they think it's the greatest thing ever.
That's absolutely true. And it's true of some of my male teammates who sort of look down their noses at us at first and later have daughters that have been in sports. And I think it's inevitable. When there's a good thing happening, it's the enthusiasm spreads, people get involved.
And it's not at anyone else's expense.
And then
it's
know that it's a good thing.
Did you think of yourself as a pioneer then, or do you see yourself as one now? Because historically it was a remarkable evolution.
No, I would say I see myself as fortunate to have stepped into the world of women's athletics when I did, because it opened a world for me. I would like to say the pioneers are the women who stepped in just ahead of us, the ones who really had doors slammed in their faces, and people like Kit Saunders and Paula Bonner, who took on the lead for young athletic departments for women. For those women that rode in the 30s, I think the battles were many, and many were lost. And it really wasn't until Title IX that the doors opened wide for girls and women.
Elroy Hirsch was the AD. How did he like the idea of a women's crew team?
I think that we made him proud.
Good.
I think it was a difficult time because facilities were not there. And I'm sure you're alluding to the
when you took over his office and turned it into a locker room for the women's crew team. Maybe that is what I'm alluding to. In true Wisconsin,
It was my
form.
first year as the varsity coach, and my captain called me the night before practice and informed me that she and the entire team would be late for practice. And Sue, not to worry, we'll be there. We'll be there. And next thing I knew, they were changing clothes in the new locker room.
Right, which was Elroy's office.
And then they arrived at the old locker room, which was in the natatorium at the time. We were borrowing one, and we did our practice and ran our run.
And how did Elroy take that?
Well, it was I think it was very difficult for him. The reality was that we needed a space.
Right.
We needed a space, and we needed it yesterday. There were efforts underway already to get us a locker room, but it was going very slowly.
When we come back, let's hear about that, because I want to hear about how you converted some of the administration, athletic administration people, and then also talk about what it's like now, which is quite remarkable. Okay, we'll be back with Sue Ela, brand new Wisconsin Sports Athletic Hall of Fame inductee this weekend. Stay with us. We're in Madison. Stay with us.
This program is a production of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. If you have comments about this broadcast, please email them to programming@uc.wisc.edu.
Where others saw lumber, we recognized a treasure. Where others saw the night, we chose the stars. Where others saw pieces, we unlocked the puzzle that could mean the end of paralysis and cancer. Since 1848, thinkers and achievers at Wisconsin have fearlessly sought ideas that transform the world. Keep on, Wisconsin. Keep on.
Hi, we're back in Madison with recently inducted University of Wisconsin Athletic Hall of Fame member Sue Ela for her great exploits, both as a member of the UW early women's crew teams and also as a coach. Before we move on to the joy of rowing and Lake Mendota and the aesthetics of crew, which people are not as aware of perhaps as they are of other sports, do you talk to your children or young women who compete now, and do you find that they're a little oblivious to some of the challenges that your generation of female athletes went through? I was saying in the break how my daughters watch Mad Men with me, and they'll go, "Oh my God, I can't believe people did that." And it's near history, and I guess you can't believe it, but it was how things were. Do the young female athletes on the crew team at Wisconsin understand how far things have come? Do they appreciate the history?
I think that the current coaching staff works to try to bring that old history to the front so that they are aware of the beginnings, the middle, and the current status of program. Gosh, it's almost like old history talking about the 70s, but truly we did walk into something we didn't know what we were getting into.
Right.
Honestly, if somebody had told me I would be coaching rowing
Making
later
a living.
in making my livelihood doing that, I would have thought they were crazy back in the time.
Does your daughter, who's now a university student, both your daughter and son go to school here, do they have an appreciation of it? They will after your induction, I guess.
I think so. I think they're both my husband and I rowed, so there's a family history there.
Sure.
Both of us coached in the program as well. But I think that the kids who are involved in the rowing programs today have benefited from organized sports programs from a very young age. Mm-hmm. This is something that was not true of those of us who began in the 70s. Right. And especially for the girls who started in the 70s. There was nothing really in the high schools. And so as the door opened, there was a lot of trial and error. There was very little funding, very little support really. So successes that occurred because the group found common bonds, common goals, and were willing to work hard toward them. Mm-hmm. And I have to say that...
And here you are. Here's some footage. Someone yelling at you. Who is that?
That was Jay Mimir, who was our coach.
Who went on to become your husband after you coached with him here at the university.
And as you can see, our equipment was hand-me-down wooden boats and oars. Mm-hmm. Equipment wasn't developed for women yet in any sport back then.
Right.
And so we just did what we did, and we did it hard. We worked hard.
Okay, let's talk about...
And we had a lot of fun.
I bet you'd had a lot of fun. Let's talk about crew for a second. It's made to be a very aesthetically pretty sport from a distance where you're standing on a shore. Every movie set in Boston or anywhere has crew people rowing up the river or across a lake. What is it like as a competitive sport? Why did you like it? Because it seems interesting but tough and lonely, kind of.
A very tough sport. It's kind of, being a rower is sort of like being a runner. It's an individual sport, but brought together 8 or 9 people into a shell and combining them and meshing as one.
Do you ever speak to each other while you're rowing, other than the
It's verboten.
Right, you can't speak, right?
It's verboten. Really,
Well, you can't breathe, much less speak.
if you're really focusing on what you're doing, you're in a zone, and
Right.
it's a stroke that's repeated time after time, 30, 40 strokes per minute, and in perfect synchronization with the other
Right.
7 or 8 people in the boat. And so the person with the voice is the coxswain.
Right.
The coxswain steers, commands the shell, coaches, is our
Quarterback.
basically our inspiration,
Right.
our quarterback.
And that's usually the smallest person in the boat, right?
That's right. We don't want to carry any more weight
No,
than we
right.
have to. And that person, coxswains tend to be very, very successful individuals. They're CEOs in their own right.
Right.
And the advent of electronic equipment for coxswains has spared a lot of vocal cords over the
Right,
years.
sure.
Back in the day, they wore this harnessed sort of a thing similar to what
Megaphone,
the
right?
coach had strapped onto their
Yeah.
face.
Did you, the aesthetics, you're outside on water along the shores of one of the most beautiful campuses in the country, most Badgers would argue, and yet you're out there just after ice is out. It's cold. I imagine there was ice on the lake sometimes when you were out there. Windy. It's not always glass. The natural world takes its toll or makes some demands of crew athletes, correct?
Yes, and that's part of the beauty of the sport of rowing. It's a sport that is done in nature.
Kind of
And
quiet.
it's
other
kind of
than-
like running again.
Yeah.
It's quiet in a sense. If we can get you in a boat, John, someday, you'll realize there's a lot more happening.
Okay, I can tell you, if I'm in the back of the boat, then the front would be about 8 feet out of the water.
There's a lot of trauma going on in the boat when you're racing, and everyone is working at full pressure.
Right.
But it's like a finely tuned machine. If it's right, you fly. And the beauty of being out on the lake in Madison is there's no better view of the campus than out on Lake Mendota.
Right.
But you're right, the conditions here are challenging. It's an adversity for the program that I think makes it stronger.
Right.
And the work ethic that we get from our student athletes that come here from wherever they come, anywhere in the world, but also from Wisconsin, seems to be able to respond well to that kind of adversity. And
Any interesting things happen out on the lake? Hit a duck, hit a loon, boats going too close to you. I mean, it's not a real manageable environment. You know, a lot of it's out of your control. When you're in Bo Ryan's basketball court or Brett Bielema's football practice facility, it's a very controlled environment. Crew, not so much.
That's very true. Many of the rowing hours are spent on waters that are quite cold, and so you have a concern always about the safety of the rowers, and policies are in place to protect them, and you always have your coach's launch alongside,
Right.
capability for rescue if need be, but
Right.
that's very rare for an individual to end up in the lake that way. Coxswains who win races,
Get
that's
thrown in
another
the lake.
story.
That's by design, right?
But high winds, thunderstorms, you know, the kinds of things that drive you off the golf course,
Right.
those kinds of things will also sometimes force a coach to change a plan for the day.
Well, I want to talk to you about your coaching experience. And I also want to ask a simple question. How fast do you go in a shell? Because I think it's faster than people know. You know, I've seen them go by and I go, my God, they're going fast. Now, I want to find out how fast that is. We're in Madison. We're with Sue Ela, new Hall of Famer here in Madison, and stay with us.
This program is a production of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. If you have comments about this broadcast, please email them to programming@uc.wisc.edu.
Hey folks, we're back in Madison with Sue Ela, recent inductee into the University of Wisconsin Athletic Hall of Fame. Sue, how fast can a shell go? I grew up in Madison along the shores of Lake Wingra. The Wingra Regatta used to be there, and I'd be standing on the shore and I see the crew go by, and it was fast. It's shocking how fast they can go. Any sense or perspective? Obviously, with new Gear 2 carbide fabrics and materials and such, I'm sure makes it even lighter and faster. But any sense for the layperson to help them understand?
Well, you probably have to talk to Chris and Beebe to get updated
Right.
2,000 meter
Right, the
fastest
men's crew
times,
coach currently,
men's
right?
and women's coaches, just because I'm not quite up to date on that. But, and of course, at the Olympic level, your crews are going even faster. But they race 2,000 meters. That's the Olympic distance. And for a men's crew, probably between 5 minutes and 5:15, 5:20 for a mile, which is almost a mile and a quarter. So it looks, when you see it along the shore, it looks effortless.
Right.
There's no sound from the shore as you're watching.
That's a great part about it, too. There's no noise.
It just looks sleek and fast and beautiful and poetic. But the reality is that every man, every woman in those boats is working at absolutely peak output,
Right.
coordinated, trained so that they can row at as high an output as possible for the longest period of time over that 2,000
Which
meters.
crew athletes are amongst the best conditioned athletes,
That's
correct?
right. Well, you start your race from a dead stop. You have to get up to full speed and then race for, it's almost a mile and a quarter.
Another thing that I like about crew, and having grown up in Madison and gone to school here, is I think there's a beauty to the non-income sports. This is fall in Wisconsin when we're doing this interview. The Badgers are one of the potential top teams in football. Bo Ryan's Badgers have fared incredibly well. Huge crowds, national media. But there's a purity about the non-income sports that is really cool. Talk to me about having competed as a non-income athlete and as a coach. What's the role of the non-income sports on a campus?
Well, you know, back when women's sports started, I think we all started sort of as participants. And as our abilities improved and our circumstances improved, we became more and more competitive. Scholarships were added. We began recruiting experienced athletes as student athletes at Wisconsin. But I think that there's generally just, at Wisconsin in particular, a huge opportunity for men and women to walk on the sport of rowing, open weight men's and women's and lightweight rowing, and be part of one of the top rowing programs in the country. And not only that, but step on up to the Olympic level.
What does that do for the campus in general? I know it helps the athletes. There are kids who want to compete, be in shape, be part of a team. But what does the non-income culture do for a campus at large?
Well, for example,
why the investment?
It allows for your basketball player daughter who won't play college basketball, perhaps, who has the talent in the sport of rowing, to develop and still become a Division I athlete.
And learn the things that sports can teach.
And possibly go on to the Olympic level.
Right.
So as participants in the beginning and developing into Division I athletes, we have a pool of student athletes who come in without any rowing background, may not even know about it until they're recruited in the SOAR lines, and then enter this great development program that's down at the Porter Boathouse.
Which is beautiful now, amazing.
And develop, you know, and become the next Wisconsin rowing champions.
Just in closing, you were a student athlete here. You were a coach here. Now your two children, your daughter and your son, are in school here.
That's right.
What are your observations on UW-Madison? Why are your kids here?
Whoa. My kids are here because they chose to be here.
Right.
My husband and I are very happy that they chose to be here. The University of Wisconsin is just the greatest university in the world as far as I'm concerned. And
you've been to quite a few.
I've been to quite a few, and the opportunities here are limitless. The quality of education is great. And as you said, Madison, the lakes are, Madison's is a jewel.
Right, and there's a cool vibe. There's kind of an interesting vibe.
There's a cool vibe, and as all of us know who are alumni, once you're a Badger, you're always a Badger.
Well, you're a special Badger now because you're in the Hall of Fame, the Athletic Hall of Fame, and I congratulate you, and I thank you for your work in helping establish women's sports here. It's really, as a father of two daughters, all of the women, frankly, from my generation, who really led the way, I'm grateful because it's tremendous for young women to be able to compete, and we're all better for it. Congratulations on your Hall of Fame induction. It's great and richly deserved.
Thank you, and to all those who made it possible for me as an athlete, student athlete, and for all those who've come after me, I thank them as well.
That's great. Well, you get your chance in public soon, and I want to thank you all for joining us. Thanks to Hall of Famer Sue Ela, and join us again on Wisconsin.
The preceding program was produced by the University of Wisconsin in association with the Big Ten Network.